Vanessa, are we good? Are you ready?
Okay, we are almost ready. Give us one more minute, please, sir.
Okay, tell me when.
Yes, sir. We're counting down from 20 seconds.
Thank you.
We are ready.
Thank you. I'm trying to order this public hearing or roundtable of the Committee of the Whole of the Council of the District of Columbia. Today is Monday, November 21st, 2022. The time is 1:09 in the afternoon. And the subject of this roundtable is two resolutions. Maybe I should say the subjects are two resolutions, PR 24-1038, entitled the Historic Preservation Review Board Matthew Bell Confirmation Resolution of 2022, and PR 24-1054, entitled the Historic Preservation Review Board Lamont Aikens Confirmation Resolution of 2022. The first resolution with regard to Mr. Bell was introduced on Friday, October 28th. And the second resolution with regard to Mr. Aikens was introduced on Thursday, November 10th, 2022. This is a roundtable, which means that we haven't given the roughly 3 weeks notice and publication in the register, but because we're at the end of Council Period 24, we wanted to move quickly with regard to these resolutions or proposed nominations by the mayor. The stated purpose of PR 24-1038 is to confirm the reappointment of Matthew Bell as an architect member of the Historic Preservation Review Board. Mr. Bell was first appointed to the board in November 2020. The stated purpose of PR 24-1054 is to confirm the appointment. This would be a new appointment of Lamont Aikens as a public member of the board. The board is the official body. The Historic Preservation Review Board is the official body of advisors appointed by the mayor, confirmed by the council, to guide the government and public on the preservation of historic buildings and property in the District of Columbia. The board also assists with the implementation of federal preservation programs and the review of federal projects in the district. The purpose of this roundtable is to give an opportunity to the public to comment on these nominees and for us to receive testimony from the nominees and the public witnesses, if any, as to the fitness of these nominees for service on the board. The record in this matter will be open for 2 weeks. That is, it will close at 5 p.m. on December 5th, 2022. So even though we're not giving as long a notice as we would earlier in the council period, we are keeping the record open for a couple of weeks so that we can hear from anybody who wishes to submit comments. Please do so, and the way to do it is on the hearing notice, which is available on the council's website. We have two witnesses, and both of the nominees, if they could be let in, Matthew Bell and Lamont Aikens. I'll ask each of you to give a statement, and then I will have some questions. Mr. Bell, do you want to go first? And good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'd be happy to. Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson and members of the Committee of the Whole. I'm Matthew Bell, a Ward 3 resident, and I'd like to thank you for allowing me to testify here today. I would also like to thank Mayor Bowser for nominating me to serve as a member of the Historic Preservation Review Board in 2020, and I'm happy to be considered for reappointment to another term. I've lived in Washington, D.C. since 1983, except for a period of 4 years studying and teaching at Cornell University. I've raised my children here. I've sent them to D.C. public schools and have been engaged in the profession of architecture, private practice, and teaching at the School of Architecture at the University of Maryland since 1989. I have practiced architecture with several firms in the city, and my current affiliation is as principal at Perkins Eastman in Washington, D.C. I have served as president of the Neighborhood Design Center in Baltimore and Prince George's County, assisting lower income communities and community groups in matters of urban design, architecture, and planning. From 1994 to 99, I was director and conference chair of the Northeast Regional Meeting of the Mayor's Institute for City Design, sponsored by the National Endowment for the Arts. And I've served as a juror for the International Biennale of Venice in 2006. I'm a member of Ward 3 Vision, a group dedicated to bringing smart growth to Ward 3 in our city. I'm a registered architect, and in 2013, I was elevated to fellow in the American Institute of Architects, and my professional work has received awards from the American Institute of Architects, Congress for the New Urbanism, the United States Green Building Council, the Urban Land Institute, and the Committee for 100 on the Federal City, to name a few. I'm also a fellow of the Congress for the New Urbanism. My work at Perkins Eastman ranges in scale from waterfronts, new towns, and neighborhoods to residential projects, civic and mixed-use buildings, and schools. In the city, I've been responsible for projects ranging from master plans such as the city's plan for Upper Georgia Avenue, the Foggy Bottom Campus Plan for George Washington University, the initial master plan for National Stadium District, the Hill East Plan, and master plan and community center for the McMillan site on North Capitol Street. My building projects have included School Without Walls, Dunbar and Roosevelt High Schools, the recently completed Cleveland Park Library, and the mixed-use Collection 14 in the U Street Historic District, a project that recently won top honors from the Congress for the New Urbanism from NIOP. Several of these projects were either modernizations or additions to landmark buildings or sites themselves, or on sites located in historic districts. My current projects include master plans and building projects for American University and Catholic University, along with mixed-use projects that combine residential, retail, and open space development. I've had the great fortune of practicing and teaching architecture and urban design in our great city, and I'm proud of the positive impact our projects have made to improve schools, neighborhoods, public places, and public facilities. Frequently, our projects have had the benefit of reviews by HPRB, and those encounters have surfaced important design issues for our projects, resulting in greater resolution and compatibility with historic settings in which they reside. It would be a great honor for me to continue to contribute to that dialogue and serve again on our community's interests and well-being on the HPRB. Thank you for your consideration. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Mr. Akins.
Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson and members of the council. I am Lamont Akins, and thank you for holding this hearing today. I wish to thank Mayor Muriel Bowser for nominating me for an appointment to the Historic Preservation Review Board and the council for its consideration of my appointment to this very important board. I've been a district resident for almost 17 years in the Brightwood Park neighborhood of Ward 4. I've had the pleasure of serving my community as a former ANC commissioner, a past member of the DC Human Rights Commission, and a past member of the Kennedy Street Revitalization Advisory Board. These opportunities have afforded me the experience to engage with my fellow district residents about how to improve and grow our great neighborhoods. I always enjoyed speaking to neighbors on how to revitalize our community, making it a better place that is open to new businesses, new buildings, and new neighbors. I currently work with PEPCO as a senior manager for strategic initiatives and external engagement. In my role at PEPCO, I have two functions. I create and execute awareness campaigns to increase our engagement opportunities in the community, and I build awareness, visibility of our community activities to external stakeholders. This position affords me the opportunity to engage with residents across all 8 wards in the district. Throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to serve in different positions in local government throughout the Washington, D.C. region. I served as a district government employee for 10 years in various capacities, including in an agency, in a council member's office, and in the mayor's office. In my last role with district government, I served as the director of the mayor's office of community affairs. In that role, I created connection opportunities between district residents and the mayor and her team. I established partnerships with communities, and I worked with community organizations, civic groups, and the ANCs on matters that were important to their communities. I now come before the council to serve as a public member on HPRB, a position that I would take great pride in. It provides me with the opportunity to speak from the perspective of a resident and a community member throughout on the matters coming before the board. I want to make sure we have an open dialogue among all stakeholders in order to achieve reasonable and practical solutions that are in the best interest of our residents and the district. As a member of the Historic Preservation Review Board, not only will I invoke my professional experience, but again, I will ensure the viewpoint of residents are considered in the decision-making process. I look forward to working collaboratively with district agencies, our historical preservation partners, our ANCs, and district stakeholders to advance the preservation, sustainability, and thoughtful development of our neighborhoods. Mr. Chairman and council members, I thank you for your time and request that you confirm my appointment to the Historic Preservation Review Board. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, each of you, for your testimony. And since you're up for reappointment, Mr. Bell, thank you for your service thus far. Can you briefly describe how much time you put in to be on the board?
Well, on days when there are hearings, obviously, sometimes the hearings go from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So that's an all-day event. And sometimes the following week, there are follow-on cases. So that usually requires minimally half a day. And then I usually spend 2 to 4 hours prepping for the meetings, reading the cases ahead of time, which usually occurs on Sunday or Monday nights. In some cases, if I feel I need to, I do a drive-by of the site, if it's a project that I don't understand, based upon the documents submitted, I go out and take a look myself.
Does the board meet once a month?
The board meets theoretically once a month, but sometimes we need 2 meetings to get through the agenda. So sometimes it's twice a month.
So that was a hearing all day and sometimes an additional half
Follow
day
on. Yes, sir.
once
Yes,
a
sir.
month.
Right.
And then 2 to 4 hours of prep time.
Well, sometimes the additional hearing can be a whole day too, depending on the length of the agenda and the discussion, how things go in the discussion, the case presentation.
Is that because members talk too much? You don't have to answer that. Mr. Akins, what do you consider are the benefits of historic preservation?
What are the benefits?
Yes.
Making sure that we hold true to our historical history here in the district, but then also keeping in mind that we are an evolving city, that we have new buildings that are coming into play. So we need to have a balance between both.
Mr. Bell, same question. What do you consider the benefits of historic preservation?
Well, I think it's really important to have a living past, and the fact that our buildings, Churchill famously said, we shape our buildings and thereafter they shape us. I believe that wholeheartedly to be true. The physical evidence of those who have gone before us serve to both memorialize their acts and instruct us on the values that they embraced in building what they built, and also serve as visual reminders of our links to our shared histories.
Mr. Bell, how do you balance the needs of a growing city with historic preservation?
Very carefully. The city has to grow. I think the board does a very good job of sort of balancing those things in discussion. I think we're always one of the principal things in terms of making sure that happens is to making sure we understand the characteristics of either the landmark building or the landmark site and how what is proposed addresses those characteristics. If you don't have a thorough vetting of those characteristics when you're evaluating something new, it becomes very difficult thing to measure. So I think it's always important. And, the staff at the preservation office is very, very good about sussing out many of those things. I do think historic districts can grow. I think there's every reason why they should grow. I think a balanced approach, perhaps the word balance is the key thing. There has to be a balanced approach where you don't open the floodgates to just about anything. You have to always measure it against the impact it's having on the characteristics of either the landmark or the district.
But Mr. Bell, isn't it really about design?
Well,
So-
yeah, implicitly, yes, of course. I mean, implicitly, that's the issue is the design of the project has to very clearly articulate what its attitude and relationship is to either the landmark or the historic district. And we review the drawings, we review perspectives, we review sections and sight lines and materials and things like that to make sure the design is compatible.
So, Mr. Aiken, same question to you. How do you balance the needs of a growing city with historic preservation?
I believe that we got to make sure that all voices are heard during the review process, but then also making sure how does the decisions that we make, how does it impact the lives of the district residents? I can, can let you know that I am not a preservation expert, but my goal is to make sure that I learn from my colleagues and then also be able to provide a great impact or feedback on these different decisions to make sure that our city can continue to grow and flourish.
I'm a little concerned with your lack of historic preservation background. And I looked at your resume. I didn't see a lot in terms of historic preservation. You were an ANC commissioner, so it must have come up at some point in that work. We've had people in the past who served on the Historic Preservation Review Board who thought of cases from the standpoint of public sentiment.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there's a case before you, before the board, and how do I want to phrase this, frame this? There's a lot of community opposition. It's about whether to landmark a building. What do you do? What do you look at? Or what would you look at?
Well, to answer your question, I know this appointment was for a public member. So of course, I do not have any, I'm not a preservation expert. Number two, I think we need, as I said earlier, we need to make sure that, all voices are heard. And then we have to make sure we strike a balance between community and historic preservation. As I stated earlier, is that I know we have colleagues on the preservation board that are experts in this. I will listen to them and provide feedback and listen to their feedback and then make a decision based on listening to both sides.
Let me ask of Mr. Bell, in your view, do existing historic preservation laws and regulations need updating or revision? And if so, in what areas?
I don't think I could sit here and honestly tell you where I think the laws are flawed. My impression in being on the board for 2 years and being in front of the board with many projects is that the process works and it is clear, and the preservation office does a very good job of giving guidance to applicants, and the board does a good job of understanding the projects. So I haven't seen anything that jumps out at me as things that should be changed. I think the only thing that I had suggested in my question and answer form was it may be good for the board to have a representation of the discipline of landscape architecture on the board, which I don't think is an expertise we have right now.
It's kind of interesting. How often does landscape come up? And
Comes up here and there. It is a design discipline that does inform sites and things. I don't think it's an urgent need, but I think if we had it, it would be useful.
What's coming to mind is Frederick Law Olmsted, whom we all very much honor as a great landscape architect. Central Park, I think that was the father. Capitol Grounds.
Right.
Interesting. Mr. Aiken, same question. In your view, do existing historic preservation laws and regulations need updating or revision?
At this time, I wouldn't be able to provide any feedback on that. I've just now gotten engaged in this preservation guidelines.
Okay. Mr. Bell, what are the factors to consider in granting exceptions to preservation requirements? What would be a good reason for granting an exception?
I think that the way the law works is that if there's a burdensome requirement on someone who owns a property and the requirements are burdensome in an economic point of view, I think also as part of the mayor's agent process, the board may approve demolition of part of a landmark if there is significant value and benefit to the District of Columbia, but that has the residents of District of Columbia, but that has to go to the mayor's agent for approval.
Mr. Akins, I'm not sure where you would be in answering that, but I'll give you a chance. What are the factors to consider in granting exceptions to preservation?
Yeah, you're correct. I wouldn't be able to answer that at this time.
You've touched on this a couple of times, Mr. Akins, but I'm going to ask you a little differently. What role do you think community input or opinion should play in determining questions of historic preservation?
I think it's very important because I believe the board would impact our communities because it's also based on affordability. Some of the changes that we would make, if you look at a property, a single family home, residents may not have the opportunity to afford to make those historical preservation upgrades that may be needed for their property. So I think the voices need to be heard from the community so we can strike a balance.
Mr. Bell?
Could you repeat the question again?
What role do you think community input or opinion should play in determining questions of historic preservation?
Well, I think the best way to answer that is to say that clearly the community should be given every opportunity through the ANC or community groups or individually to weigh in on their feelings about a particular project. And we are to give it great weight, particularly with the ANC, in terms of how the ANC votes whether or not to support a project. That said, I also believe that the board's primary obligation is to determine whether or not what is being proposed is compatible with either the landmark or the site. And those kinds of questions about compatibility are not necessarily subject to all of the likes and dislikes of individual folks. One has to always balance what people are saying about a project and how they feel about it versus what really is compatible, and using our best professional expertise to determine those things. It is oftentimes the case that the board decides in favor of someone who wants to make an alteration or an addition, and the neighbors simply don't like a taller building, even though it's compatible. So we do find ourselves in the position of saying, we hear you, we've listened to what you say, but we don't necessarily agree in terms of how we judge compatibility.
And there might be a different forum to argue height.
Well, yes, yeah. Well, some of that is zoning and BZA, clearly. But clearly, the height is one thing you do take into consideration with historic districts for sure. I mean, for example, if someone puts an addition onto a townhouse on Capitol Hill, we're very careful to make sure the sight lines are maintained so that it does not compromise the contributing building or the landmark in terms of what you see.
So, I'm trying to think, from time to time, there've been historic districts proposed that have come before the board. And I'm posing this question to Mr. Aiken. Sometimes the proposal for a historic district is very controversial. I'm thinking of Bloomingdale. I think there was a lot of opposition there. Bloomingdale's a neighborhood, roughly Rhode Island and Avenue, North Capitol Street, and built around 1900. Quite distinctive in its architectural character. So let's say that you're on the board and there's a proposal that comes to the board to designate a historic district, putting aside that it is now. This is hypothetical. And there's a lot of community opposition. So help me understand a little better how you are going to deal with that community opposition. You've got the district, it's got these historic homes, 120 years old. It's a distinctive architectural style. You've got some angry residents. They're screaming at a board meeting. What do you do?
Well, of course, we make sure that all voices are heard. But at the end of the day, I have to take, I'm listening to the staff recommendation and also listening to the preservation board experts. And then, of course, I will vote accordingly, what's best at the best interest for the city. But keeping in mind that we, give a voice and making sure that everyone has an opportunity to speak and provide their grievances on what the issues are. I don't want you to believe, Chairman, that I'm going to be a member that's going to have a no voice, a no vote on every time something comes up when it comes to a historical district or something of that nature. I'm a very reasonable person when it comes to analyzing and listening to other people.
Okay. Time requirements. So I asked earlier, Mr. Bell, you said once a month, a hearing all day, sometimes an additional hearing, it could be a half day or all day, and then prep time of 2 to 4 hours. Since you've been serving, I assume, but I'm going to ask anyway, are you able to meet the time requirements to serve on the commission if you're reappointed?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Aiken?
Yes, I have the time commitment.
Mr. Bell, do you know of any potential conflicts of interest that would affect your serving on the board? And if there is, how would you handle it?
Well, we frequently have projects in the District of Columbia. Sometimes they're in historic districts, and I would, of course, recuse myself from any conflict of interest with either projects we're designing or with any client that we have that we're currently working for that has a project in front of the board. I would recuse myself for that as well.
Mr. Aiken?
From my understanding, currently, my PEPCO doesn't have any projects coming before at the board. If we did at any time, I would recuse myself from that proceeding.
And I asked this at every confirmation hearing. I think I asked it in my pre-hearing questions that I submitted. Do you have any outstanding liability for taxes, fees, or other payments to the district, federal, or other state or local government? Mr. Bell?
No, sir.
Mr. Aiken?
No, sir.
Give me just a second. I don't have any other questions. Either of you have anything you want to add, Mr. Bell?
No, just I've really enjoyed being on the board. I think it aligns well with my expertise, and I look forward to continuing to serve.
Mr. Akins?
I don't have anything to add, but thank you, Chairman, for today's hearing. I appreciate it.
Let me say, if either of you want to supplement your remarks, the record is open for 2 weeks, so it closes at 5 p.m. on the December 5th. My guess is the DC Preservation League, which did not sign up to testify today, may be in touch with one or both of you. And I would urge that if they do reach out, that you meet with them, because I will, I've always given great weight.
Yes, Chairman, I'm meeting with them next week.
Great. Okay, I don't have anything else. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to close down this hearing. So this has been a hearing, a roundtable on 2 of the mayor's nominations for the Historic Preservation Review Board, PR 24-1038, appoint Matthew Bell, and PR 24-1054 to appoint Lamont Akins to the board. The record will close at 5 p.m. on December 5th, 2022. The time is 1:39 p.m. and this roundtable is adjourned.